Hello, Danky Kang Gang. In part one, we talked about the Palestinian conflict and just how complicated the whole darn thing really is, and how it's difficult for a novice to grasp it, and you know, it's even more difficult to sort of explain it, especially like when you're put on the spot for it, and it's not really something that you like campaigned on or based your election around. So, uh, without further ado, we have David Pakman on AOC. His video Alexandria Ocasio Cortez face plants on Israel Palestine. Face plants, ladies and gentlemen. Now, to me, a face plant is, um, oh, what the fuck was that guy who said, "Who is Aleppo?" Or what is Aleppo? Because that, ladies and gentlemen, was a faceplant. Yeah, Gary Johnson. When Gary Johnson asked, "What is Aleppo?" That is a faceplant, ladies and gents. This is not a faceplant.
From day one, since the great victory of Alexandria Ocasio Cortez in her New York Democratic primary, I have expressed concern about her lack of depth when it comes to many issues. And the
Okay, I mean, already off the bat, this is kind of getting into pedantic territory because David Pakman, he's saying, he's criticizing her for not having a whole lot of depth on issues, but Uh, on the contrary, I think AOC is a lot deeper on the issues than pretty much the majority of the Democratic Party. I would rather her be at the helm than somebody like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi.
way that that translates into her candidacy is that I was afraid that when she would get questioned in more detail about some of her views, it wouldn't go well. And that unfortunately has happened. She was interviewed on a PBS show called Firing Line, and it became cringeworthily obvious.
Okay, he's blowing this shit way out of proportion. I didn't think it was cringe. I didn't think, yeah, she might have stumbled and fumbled a little bit, but Jesus Christ, David Pakman, give her a break. He's being way too critical, coming right out the gate with words like faceplant and cringe and just, come on, David.
That she was sort of speaking about things she doesn't know much about when she was asked about the Israeli Palestinian conflict. And she was asked, "What's your position on Israel?" And eventually she was asked to elaborate. And it was a combination of misstatements and looking around in a confused manner, silence, and just outright confusion about what seems to be going on in the region, followed by at the end one of these disclaimers that she's not actually an expert on this. So
Okay, David, so what's your fucking take on like the Mars colony or mining asteroids in the far future? Like you're not an expert on that. You don't know jack shit about that, but let's hear your hot take on it and see how well you fucking explain yourself.
So why is she even being asked? Now, before I play the clip, I want to clarify something. I don't dislike Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. This has nothing to do with my view on the Israeli Palestinian conflict. I think I have a lot in common with her view on the Israeli Palestinian conflict. I think it's okay to use the word occupation with regard to some of what's going on there.
Oh, you think it's okay to use the word occupation? Like that's a pretty mild word for it. I would say it's like a colonization. It's a Yeah, it's brutal, David, is what it is. Let's not beat around the bush here. After all, we all claim to be leftists. We need to be united in our denunciation of the state of Israel and its actions against the Palestinian people. And let me just come out and say that doesn't make me anti-Semitic. I happen to love Jewish people. I happen to hate anti-Semitism. In the same fashion that I can criticize the actions of the state of Israel without being anti Semitic, it's the exact same way I can criticize the actions of the US government, the government of the country in which I live, and I'm not insulting myself in the process. And I'm not insulting any other fellow American comrades on the left in the process. In fact, I think they would all agree that there are deep problems with America, just as I'm sure left wingers in Israel would agree there are deep problems there as well.
And I already predict people writing in and saying, David, you're a Jew Zionist and you just don't like that she called Israel occupiers. That's not the problem. The problem is that when she was asked what she meant, she vaguely mentioned settlements when the real issue around occupation is Gaza and the West Bank.
Okay, David, but what do you think is going on in the West Bank? What do you think's happening in the West Bank, David? Put on your thinking cap, think about it for a few minutes, and then get back with me. Because there's settlements going on in the West Bank. Intrusive fucking settlements. Dipshit. So yeah, she was kind of talking about the issues. It's not like she mentioned like, "Ooh, well there are purple unicorns out in the valleys of Palestine." It's not like she just mentioned some weird shit that was off the cuff and had nothing to do with it. She was talking about the fucking settlements, David.
And this is not a small detail. It's sort of the detail. It's really difficult to watch this, but let's make an attempt. Let's take a listen.
Once again, it's not. It's more difficult to watch David just being a total chode to my girl AOC. I wish she was my wife.
But I am, of course, the dynamic there in terms of
You're insulting my lady right here, David, and I don't appreciate it. And I am not a chauvinist, and I would be more than happy to let AOC be the dominant one in the relationship if she did want to be my woman. Uh, she wouldn't be my woman so much as I would be her man. I would be her man slave. I love you, AOC. Okay, we're getting off the rails here. Let's get back to the video.
of geopolitics and the war in the Middle East is very different than people expressing their First Amendment right to protest.
Well, yes, but I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that to me is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine.
I mean, what else could you call that? They are settling and occupying the West Bank. They've surrounded Gaza, kept it besieged. And you can look at the original map of Palestine, and it's clear that Israel occupies lands that used to belong to Palestine a few decades ago, and so there's obviously some geopolitical disagreements to be had as where the border should be drawn. So it's apt to use the term occupation. I don't think she was mistaken in saying that.
What did you mean by that?
Oh, I think what I meant.
I mean, she seems a little unsure. She seems a little hesitant. But, that's fine. She's trying not to get trapped here. Because, of course, we all know how much the MSM has been just giant dicks to AOC. Everybody likes to shit on her constantly. Even David Pakman, even a so-called fellow progressive. But, it's okay to hesitate. I'm a nervous guy. Especially in my earlier videos, I used to say and I used to pause a whole lot. It's bad, folks. Early Danky Kang was a cringe factory, but I'm trying to get better. I try to be good, ladies and gentlemen. I know I'm still cringy as fuck, and I try not to be. But as you can see, I'm a weeaboo. I mean, I got that going for me. Ladies, line up. AOC, text me.
Is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
I mean, that's true. In these settlements along the West Bank, you have Palestinians corralled into checkpoints and into control areas and security zones, and there's walls and guard towers all the fuck over the place with barbed wire. And any time the state of Israel wants, they can shut down these points and just freeze travel. So if you go to the other side of a town to, I don't know, go to the market, get some fresh fruit and veggies so you can make yourself a nice dinner later, and you try to go back home, oh, tough shit, they've closed the checkpoint down. So yeah, I mean, She hesitated a little bit. She, hemmed and hawed a little bit, but what she said in principle was true. She didn't elaborate on it that much. Granted, she probably doesn't know that much, but her heart was most definitely in the right place. I don't think this was cringe or face planting or hell, she had something of a lot more substance to say than 99% of other American politicians that appear in the mainstream media have to say. They usually just kowtow about how Israel has a right to exist. The Palestinians are terrorists, blah, blah, blah.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
So, I mean, there she said, like, I'm not the expert on this issue. So, she's not claiming, like all these Republicans are, to be like these foreign policy masters on this issue, but I mean, heck, she ran as a congresswoman District of New York, not the District of Palestine, and she's buddies with Ilhan Omar. So, I mean, I think we can give her a pass. I think we can give her a fucking pass, David. You're being way too overcritical of someone who's supposedly on your side. But the more of these videos I cover of David Pakman, the more I start to get the feeling that he's not really a progressive. At least not in the sense that we'd all like to think. He's a revisionist, folks. He's a Trotskyist. For those non-Marxist viewers, he's someone who claims to support political movement till it actually starts get going off the ground, and then he shits all over it. So. Yeah, I think that might describe David Pakman. It's the trend I'm seeing, but let's keep going.
So, if this is something you don't know about, you don't first fail and then say, I'm not actually an expert, right? You say right away, this is a complex issue. This affects a lot of people.
Okay, so she didn't say that. Like, fucking nail her to the cross, why don't you? Do you see the kind of language he's using? Like, epic fail and face planting and cringe and, like, he's just totally just shitting all over AOC in this video. Yeah, she came out and said she wasn't an expert on it. I don't know what you want, David. You want her to fucking go back in time to like 30 seconds ago and clarify that before she starts speaking? Well, too bad. She fucking didn't. She slipped up. Sorry. Try running for Congress sometime, David, and see if you have perfect fucking interviews every single time where you don't think that she goes back and rewatches these and says, Jesus Christ, why didn't I say this or why didn't I say that? I do that in my videos all the fucking time. So David's just being totally hard on the poor lady.
And quite frankly, I'm still working out exactly what my policy ideas are here. But what I do know is that
what the fuck is there to work out, David? The Israel-Palestine conflict should be the policy should be as clear as night and day. Palestinian people deserve equal rights. They deserve human rights, and they deserve to be treated with dignity. The state of Israel has been brutal and horrible in their treatment of these people. They deserve international condemnation. They certainly deserve a good scolding from the United States. Once again, nothing anti-Semitic in that statement at all. I love Jewish people, especially leftist Jewish people. I just don't like the state of Israel. I would criticize this if the shoe was on the other foot and it was the Palestinians subjugating the Israelis. So, there's no racial bias to be had here. I'm simply against the oppression of one culture against another.
I want to deal with the conditions that are afflicting Palestinians, and I also want to deal. You say something as opposed to saying things that are just so obviously vague, unclear, and uninformed. And I do find it annoying when after face planting, somebody says, but I'm not even an expert on this. When Candace Owens did this in her conversation with Joe Rogan about climate change, I said, don't say a bunch of crazy, uninformed stuff.
Okay, but here's the difference between that, David Pakman. When Candace Owens was talking about climate change, you might as well have listened to a fucking chipmunk talk about climate change because it didn't fucking matter. It was gobbledygook. It didn't fucking make any goddamn sense. But when you listen to AOC talk about Israel-Palestine, yeah, she might have been slow. She might have been a little slow on the delivery, a little hesitant. She might be shy. I don't fucking know. Give her some slack. Her heart was in the right place, and what she said was fundamentally on the right track. She could have clarified it a little bit better, but the general statement that she said was right. And to compare what AOC said, and then say, but I'm not an expert on that, with something that Candace Owens said, especially with in this example with her regard to the climate change thing, that's a real low blow on David Pakman's part to sort of equate her to Candace Owens. And I just want to say that's pretty fucking low. That's a giant stab in the back from a so-called progressive.
Stuff and then say, but I don't even really know about this, so you can't hold me accountable. I am not showing you this because I disagree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's view on any particular issue. I agree.
But you disagree so much with how she said it, then you say that she face planted it and it's cringeworthy, and you just totally shit all over her and then act like you're doing her a favor or something, and you act like you're still on her side, but you're obviously fucking not, David. You're coming down really, really hard on my girl, and I don't know why. Maybe she spurned you. Maybe she spurned you the way that she spurned Ben Shapiro. And we're all just jilted lovers in this whole AOC thing.
With her that repression of Palestinian rights in the areas occupied.
But I'll just say my love for AOC is more to do with her policies and stuff. She could look, and I'm not saying she's ugly. I think she's very good looking, but I'm just saying she could be very, very unattractive to me, and I would still love her in terms of her policies and all that stuff. So, when I say I love you, AOC, it's more out of like an admiration, not necessarily like a romantic thing. That being said, I do think she's attractive. I just say that because I think she's got a boyfriend, and I don't want to come off as some kind of a freak.
By Israel is a crisis. I'm in favor of working to end that immediately. What I am telling you is that what we don't want to do in general is let people skate by as so-called progressives without actually knowing stuff merely because we like their personality or their talking points or their identity or the excitement that's generated around them.
Okay, but again, like nothing she said about the settlements or anything like that, the occupation, nothing about that was factually incorrect. So again, David's making a total mountain out of a molehill here. He is saying that AOC just did this epic fail on TV, and she didn't. She hesitated a bit, but that's fine. You got to give people a fucking chance, David, but he's being very, very weird about this. He's being a total chode.
Whatever reason, Trump won not because of his views on policy or trade or whatever. He won by catalyzing some really horrible people around xenophobic ideology. On the left, we've got to call people out when they're just wrong. She was clueless on this.
She wasn't clueless. She was hesitant. And she said she wasn't an expert. And for him to compare AOC's statements on this to like the ridiculous bullshit that Trump says, that is like the ultimate insult. That's the ultimate fucking insult, David. AOC is not the left equivalent of Donald Trump. And if that's what he's driving at, then fuck you, David.
The Simon Wiesenthal Center called her out, saying, "Road to hell paved with good intentions and scant knowledge. Happy to provide info to Alexandria, who knows."
All right, so it says, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gives brutally awkward explanation, blah, blah, blah. New York Democrat AOC took a ton of heat for tripping up on a question about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, showing a lack of understanding in the situation. Again, where's the lack of understanding? I know she hesitated. I know she fucking said she wasn't an expert. Jesus Christ, everybody's treating this like she's supposed to be some kind of a fucking expert on this issue, like she's supposed to be some kind of like scholar, like a medieval politician. or not medieval, Middle East politician. Like, she's supposed to know the ins and outs of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. She called it an occupation. I think she was correct in calling it that. Israel does occupy the lands in which the settlements occupy. I mean, what the fuck else would you call that? And then when she talks about the settlements and how it impedes the Palestinians' quality of life, she was right about that too. Damn it! Nothing she said was displayed a lack of knowledge or false information or anything like that. So everybody that's shitting all over her are just being a bunch of chodes.
Zero about 3,500-year relationship of Jewish people to land of Israel. Jacobin magazine or Jacobin, I'm not exactly sure how they pronounce it. It's a left-wing magazine, often very critical of Israeli foreign policy. They also said that this interview was not good and it's not doing anybody any favors.
Jesus Christ. Okay, guys. Well, apparently AOC was just supposed to come out there and give just the greatest stance on Israel Palestine there's ever been in the history of American left wing politics. This was supposed to be like her magnum opus moment, apparently. And no one apparently told her about this. Uh, Jesus Christ, you guys. First of all, she's not an expert in this issue. Uh, when Louis Gohmert, when you ask Louis Gohmert what he would do about the Israeli settlements, see what kind of dumb shit he comes out of his stupid mouth. When you ask Mitch McConnell what he would do, or Donald Trump what he would do, what kind of dipshit thing do you think they would say? But let's keep it on the Democratic side. If you ask Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi what they would do about the Palestinians, do you think they would have anything of substance to say? Do you think they would be compassionate to the plight of the Palestinians in the same way that AOC is? So hell no. AOC is one of the few voices in our media of elected officials actually standing up for the Palestinian people, and I commend her for that. David doesn't. David thinks that's cringy. David thinks that's a faceplant, and he throws her under the fucking bus the same way that he threw Ilhan Omar under the bus. I'm beginning to sense a strange pattern here, David. And this isn't because you're Jewish. Once again, I'm not going down a racist allegation here. I'm just saying that it seems David has a bias, a pro-Israel bias, and maybe that is just because of the implication I've received from these videos. I'm going to continue to watching more David Pakman videos on Israel in the future, just to kind of get a sense of where his head is on this issue. I believe he is, supportive of the Palestinians' right to have a state. But it just seems awkward whenever a progressive American politician comes out and tries to, say things against Israel. He seems very quick to throw them under the bus.
And this was my concern from the get-go. I've expressed concern that she's not totally clear exactly on what she means by democratic socialist. And earlier during this interview, she made predictions about capitalism coming to an end and saying the U.S. wasn't always a capitalist country, wasn't always having capitalist roots. Wasn't clear what history.
Okay, I mean, you can kind of say that before the Industrial Revolution. I mean, outside of the major industrial cities, we had mostly agrarian slave-based economy. I mean, the economy of the southern United States, especially in the antebellum South, was dominated by a slave-based economy. So, it's a crude form, primitive form of labor, but it's not necessarily capitalism, because capitalism involves the investment and capital into a certain property, private property, where you pay the workers who work on that property. You pay them a wage, and you make a profit off of their labor. So investment, wage, profit. Those are the three elements that make capitalism what it is, ladies and gents. So, I mean, you can consider a society in which the economy is driven not by wage labor, but by slave labor. You can consider that to be not necessarily a capitalist system.
she was pulling from. So I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm not saying she has bad intentions. I'm not saying she made the wrong decisions on many issues as an elected official, as a potential elected official. What I am saying is that from the first interviews I saw with her, I perceived her depth of knowledge to be very limited on a range of issues. And I'm simply
Once again, though, her range of knowledge might be limited, but it's in the right places. She's at least compassionate to the plight of the Palestinian people, and I'm sure if she gives herself time to get educated, she reads up on this, and her advisors tell her more about this, she'll make the good decisions that need to be made on this issue. She'll support humanitarian decisions that help the Palestinian people. So throwing her under the bus like this and just jumping on board the right wing hate train that AOC embarked on is just really sad to see from David Pakman. He's kind of being the bully here. He's not really giving her any kind of wiggle room or any kind of benefit of the doubt or anything like that. He's just really being a total chode to her.
wondering whether, thinking about whether this progressive blue wave that we want, are we satisfied with candidates with this degree of knowledge, or do we want people who are more involved? And
Okay, yeah, if I could get like somebody like AOC but smarter, that would be awesome. But hell, I would rather have AOC than somebody like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or some other mainstream Democrat. I would rather have a progressive. I would take any progressive than no progressive at all, even if they may not have expert genius uh doctorate level knowledge on every single fucking political issue, especially international issues out there.
I know you go to the polls with the candidates you have, not the candidates you wish to have, but why not work on getting even better candidates if you can? And if you're going to respond to me, please.
So he's basically saying AOC's not a good candidate. A shitty progressive. That's very laughable coming from David Pakman, the guy that gives softball interviews to Nazis and stabs other fellow progressives in the back. Real laughable.
None of the Pakman is a Zionist shill stuff. I agree with her on a lot of the substance. This isn't about that. You know I call it like I see it, and whoever I disagree with, I'm going to tell you. Tell me where she demonstrated depth of knowledge.
Okay, again, just to clarify, I don't think Pakman is a Zionist shill. I just think that he's very quick to throw anybody remotely critical of Israel under the bus. He's very quick to do that. That doesn't mean that I don't think he's critical of Israel himself, but it just seems like he wants everyone to be perfect on this issue. And he himself isn't perfect on the issue, clearly, but he has these giant unrealistic expectations for these progressives that they just have to be perfect champions and say everything right 100% of the time. Hey, David Pakman, guess what? Social democracy is full of flaws too, buddy. And yeah, when you get social democrats running for office, they're going to have flaws and contradictions in their political approach.
Knowledge on the issue. We're out of time today. Great bonus show. Sorry.
All right, so yep, that's the episode. David Pakman threw AOC under the bus. Sad to see. So-called progressive. Like I said, I used to watch this guy's show like every single day. He's got 666,000 subscribers, and I still like him. I like David as a person. I think he's a nice guy, but I think he's got some real poor takes on some really important issues, and I just like to draw attention to that.